Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to episode 282 of the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, brought to you by, of course, jaysfromthecouch.com. We're so happy you're tuning in for another week of Blue Jays talk, whether it's you're watching our live stream on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, or you're catching the audio version on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. We're ever so thankful for you tuning into this episode and all our others, all 281 of them. We've got a great show for you this week. We're gonna talk about untouchable Blue Jays, Major League Blue Jays who are untouchable. There will be some disagreement, I assure you, just like there is every week, and our untouchable prospects as well. And our regular, what has become a regular feature here on the Jays from the Couch podcast, our fake news segment. We've got some doozies for you. I'm your host, as always, Sean Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at JFtC. And this week I am joined by my ever so faithful colleagues. First of all, host of the On Feck Circle Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, the feckless wonder himself, Steve Feck. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Sean. How are you?
I am hanging in. I'm getting ready for a holiday break, a much-deserved holiday break, so I'm looking forward to that. Unfortunately, there's no Blue Jays action going on, so we'll have to settle for the three of us, including host of Sunny Side of the Dome, Velvet's rear end.
Jaws 4.
Karen Suter, Sunny Side of the Dome, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and Velvet. Good evening.
Hello. Not my ass.
And it's really unfortunate that the people who don't tune in live when we do the show on YouTube and Facebook, they don't get to see the little things like that, like Velvet's rear end. They're they're listening to the podcast, the audio version, and they miss out on those little things, right? And so I highly recommend tuning in to the live airing of these shows, just because there are little subtleties that you just don't pick up on the audio. However, this week, because we're in a lockout situation, there's not a whole lot of action to speak of, but that doesn't really stop Blue Jays fans from kind of pining and wishing and hypothesizing, which is something that we're kind of good at anyway. But when that's all you have to do, it's kind of like, you kind of keep hearing the same things over and over again, this trade target, that trade target, and so on and so on. So it's kind of lean times. It's we're in the Bob Cratchit point of baseball coverage at this point. But soon the floodgates will open and Scrooge McDuck will have seen his little ghosts and all will be right again. Millionaires will be making money, billionaires will be making more money, and everybody will be happy. But until then, we can only think about what could be, right? And so at this point, we've seen the Blue Jays sign Kevin Gausman. We've seen them extend Jose Barrios. We've seen them sign Yimi Garcia. And we've heard them being mentioned and linked to almost everybody with a pulse because of their situation, right? Like they're in it and they're going for it this year in 2022. They're clearly not messing around. And I think the rumor about Corey Seager kind of proves that. They weren't quite willing to go to the stupid Texas Rangers kind of money. And rightfully so. I wouldn't have either. However, they were in. They knew it would be expensive, and they were in it, right? So I think that gives everybody an idea that they're not done. And there's some big things once this lockout dispute kind of gets settled. So in that vein, our heads kind of start to turn to they're looking for middle infield upgrades. And the free agent market, there's the Carlos Correa, there's the Corey Seager tier, and then there's kind of meh, right? And if you're going to spend money, you're going to probably end up spending more than you had intended on a lower level infielder, like a Kyle Seager, for example. He's going to cost you more than a lot of people might be comfortable with. So because of that, you turn your mind to trades. And when you turn your mind to trades, you got to think about, okay, they're going to try and get better. They're going to focus on the middle infield. Then you start thinking, the dreaming starts on the Jose Ramirez, the Matt Chapmans, that kind of thing, Ketel Marte, and so on and so on. And then, of course, the flip side of that is, okay, well, they can trade for this person, but they better not trade away this person, right? And this is where it gets really fun, because every team sees value differently, more or less, right? There are things that they can all agree on, but there are some subtleties that they see things differently. They value certain players over others. Long way of saying, let's talk about our untouchables. Let's start in the major league roster, where the whole idea here is to get better, right? And they have a very solid collection of talent. They have some who, we'd love to send off elsewhere, Randall Gritch. And then we have others that we're just clinging to for dear life. Knowing full well, though, that when you make a trade, you have to pay, right? You got to give up to get whatever you're getting. So let's start here with the idea that they need to get better. So the level of trade that they're going to pull off is not like when they traded for Teoscar Hernandez and everybody was like, now they're going after higher level, more elite, quote unquote, elite players. So I'm going to start with you, Karen, because I know your answer. On the major league roster, and I think we can all agree, Bo, Vladdy, they're automatically untouchable, so I don't even think we need to mention them. But who else in your mind, Karen, would you consider to be untouchable, not going anywhere? Trading this person makes the team worse.
Right. Well, my untouchables, I think you've got to look at Kevin Costner, Andy Garcia, Sean Connery. Sorry, I don't have any fake news. I had to throw something in there that was a little bit different. Okay.
Well, they could trade Sean Connery now, I guess.
He's not helping anybody anymore.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
Anyway, okay, no, seriously, to refocus. So, aside from Guerrero and Bichette, George Springer, I'm looking forward to hopefully a mostly healthy season from him, because darn, when he was on the field, we saw why the Blue Jays paid as much money as they did for him. So, and for me, a couple of guys that aren't necessarily untouchables for a lot of other people, I really, really like Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and I really, really like Teoscar Hernandez. It breaks my heart to think about trading away either of those guys, because I envision a future Toronto Blue Jays championship, and both of them are on it, and both of them have made positive contributions to allow the team to get there. So that's it for me on the major league side, position player wise. And then pitchers, I mean, you pretty much you kind of covered it. So Barrios, Guzman, I mean, they were both recently signed and extended, and I'm not even sure that MLB allows them to be traded at this point. I think you have to keep them for a certain period of time. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, they shouldn't be trading them or Alek Manoah, and I think Jordan Romano is a really good one. So that's a longer list than a lot of people have, but I think this is a really good core that they've got in place that I would not trade, and they've just got to add.
Okay, and I'm surprised actually that your list was that long, but when you look at your list, it makes sense. It's a logical list and doesn't really feel that long when you start to say, okay, yeah, that guy, yeah, let's keep him. But Steve, over to you. Same question: who's untouchable? Who can you not deal off this major league roster?
And I'm assuming we're talking about for 2022, and we're not looking out beyond there. Well, I think Vladdy would be there. Bo is there. George Springer, even if he is not the peak George Springer, I think the intangibles he brings to a team and to a roster makes him untouchable. Danny Jansen for me is untouchable. Even if he's not going to be the starting catcher, I don't see who possibly would be the starting catcher at this point. But I think his knowledge of the strike of the pitching staff, of framing the strike zone, his uncanny ability to block things. I think Danny Jansen is an untouchable, and that's probably about it as far as position players. I mean, you can't trade Teoscar and Lourdes. You theoretically could get by if you traded one of them, but I don't know that I would get that upset if either of those guys left. I think the pitching staff, you have to go with the three that Karen mentioned, Barrios, Gausman, and Manoah. You want to keep Romano in the bullpen. I think you want to keep Tim Meza only because he's left-handed. And other than that, the store is open. If I was the GM, the store would be open. And I'll say, fine, just tell me who you want or what you want to go for, and then go from there.
Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, if I can circle back, I mean, these are, so for me, I gave you the guys that really I'm not trading. Now, there are other guys that I would only do so with great reluctance. I'm not going to label them as untouchable, but I think, as compared to the start of 2021, when a lot of their bullpen was a dumpster fire, and I think we saw a lot of that in May, unfortunately, piece by piece, I think they are assembling a pretty decent bullpen with Jordan Romano. I believe in Tim Meza. He made a believer out of me last season. I mean, they made some good in-season trades, getting, Adam Simber, Trevor Richard, and it sounds like Yimi Garcia's got some upside, and hopefully they can find the best of him. So, I'm not going to label any one of those guys other than Romano as untouchable, but I'd be very reluctant to trade any of them away. I want to keep them. I want them to help the Jays win. So, and I like Danny Jansen too. I am starting to feel like Gabriel Moreno is the catcher of the future. I just don't know when that's going to be, but you can't call up some guy from the minor leagues and hand him the starting job, not if you're planning on trying to win a World Series. So I can see Danny Jansen not being there at some point, but I don't know when that will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see Danny Jansen kind of, I think, automatically people will start with his offensive numbers. Excuse me. And Danny's one of these guys who can run into a pitch every now and then, and he's not a terribly wasted at bat like others, Randall Gritch. And so, but aside from his offensive production, I think the Blue Jays are madly in love with everything else Danny Jansen does. And his pitchers are madly in love with everything Danny Jansen does. And so I think for that reason, and Steve, I think you're absolutely right. Whether I agree or not, I think the Blue Jays find Danny Jansen to be untouchable right now. But as Karen said, Gabriel Moreno very well may be the catcher of the future. And I could see a scenario where Danny Jansen kind of is the everyday guy, and then it kind of, makes a way for time shared with Gabriel Moreno, and then Danny Jansen becomes the backup. And which means, of course, Alejandro Kirk is, in my opinion only, I love him, but I think he's trade fodder. I really, I don't see how you can keep him on the roster, knowing full well that Reese McGuire is hanging around somewhere. He's a backup catcher. Okay. He's probably in a parking lot somewhere. But he's the backup catcher. Alejandro Kirk is not a backup catcher. He can't be playing part-time. He's got to be playing so you can keep that bat in the lineup. And that's why they're at a crossroads with their catching situation. They either non-tender, what's his face there? Reese McGuire. I'm sorry. It's been a long few months of school, and I'm just hitting the holiday break now. But yeah, so Now I lost it. Yeah, so Alejandro Kirk is trade fodder. As far as untouchables go, though, I think Teoscar Hernandez is in that category. They've put too much into what he is now. You know, I really believe this is almost like a feather in the cap of Ross Atkins, his ability to trade for somebody, to turn nothing into something, right? So I think he personally may value Teoscar more than other teams will. And for that reason, I wonder if they would even get what they want anyway. But you're not going to easily replace 30 home runs and the whatever he brings behind the scenes. The interesting one for me, though, is Lourdes Gurriel. I'm not looking to trade him, but I wouldn't be sad because for the very reason, Karen, you want to keep him. That's the very reason why I say if you can pull off a deal and he has to be included, you kind of bite the bullet and you do it because he does bring that value. And it's value that I think can be replaced with a signing of a Corey Dickerson or a Suzuki, should that happen. And whatever you get in return is going to make up for, it's going to fill another hole that losing Lourdes doesn't necessarily create. The size of that hole isn't the same for me. On the pitching side, though, I know one of our regular commenters goes back and forth on trading Hyunjin Ryu. That's not going to happen. I depending on which day of the week it is, if it's an odd day, then he says to trade him, and if it's an even day, then you can't trade him. But but yeah,
right,
right. But he's not going anywhere. And of course, just so we're all clear, I'm going to say there's a comment waiting in the bullpen for the call to come in, and I'm going to throw it up here to close out this discussion. However, that being said, Nate Pearson, if you can get something for Nate, I wouldn't be sad. Nate Pearson is going to be an effective bullpen piece for somebody. Toronto can either cling to the fact that he might be a starter. They can try that. And I'm sure there's value there. However, deal him if you have to. And Jordan Romano is the only one in the bullpen. Maybe Tim Mays. I hadn't thought of him, Steve, but maybe. But for me, Jordan Romano is the only one that is untouchable. And in the rotation, I think, Ryu would be the only one who I wouldn't be sad to lose, but he's not going anywhere because who's going to pay $20 million for whatever Ryu is next year, right? So
I didn't know that he was injured during the season. Because he's apparently had surgery in the off season. Like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys playing through injuries over the last year or two. And it's always surprising when you hear it, right? Because like me, I'm a regular 43-year-old man, and I have hard enough time getting out of bed in the morning. I don't know how these guys go out and play Major League Baseball at a higher level. But when you're talking about, and here's another comment before we get to the other one. Mikey Bananas, Bananas, watching on YouTube, says Conforto can replace Gurriel, and he certainly can play defense better, even though Gurriel was a finalist for a Gold Glove, which sullies the idea of Gold Gloves for me. But sorry, Karen. I know, but I'm sorry.
Got better though. He was very shaky out there early in the season. Even I have to admit that when balls were hit in his direction, I would, like, figuratively speaking, hold my breath. Mm-hmm. In the last 2 months of the season, that stopped happening. Like, right. I kept waiting for him to mess up a play, and he wasn't doing it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Karen, you will be leading the Don't Trade Lourdes fan club. You can look for her website live any day now. Anyway, so I want to end the discussion on the Major League roster with the guy who's quickly becoming one of my favorite commenters on our show. Matt Sweeby, watching on YouTube, he says I'm right, and we all know it. So whatever I say is right. So that means Alejandro Kirk, see you later. Lourdes Gurriel, if the price is right, see you later. Karen, I know. Every time I mention it, I feel like I'm hurting. Like I feel like I'm making you angry at me every time. But
the thing is Lourdes hurts himself, and I say it that way because he has that team-friendly contract that the other 29 teams lust over. So if you're putting Gurriel in a deal, you are going to truly maximize your return.
Agreed.
I think that's why I don't think Lourdes wants to go anywhere. I don't think he'd even want to go to Houston to play with his brother. I think he's happy with Toronto, but he is just such an attractive piece. I mean, what team wouldn't ask for him? Of course, they're going to ask for Lourdes Gurriel. So I think that's why his name always comes up, because of his team-friendly contract and the fact that he probably is yet to hit the ceiling. Those two factors make him the most valuable trade candidate, I think, on the Blue Jays.
I think the Orioles don't ask for him, but they don't. I'm not sure they even know what they're doing anyway. So,
if they're not bowling him over, then yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But we're not done talking about Lourdes Gurriel. He'll make an appearance in our fake news segment, so we'll stick a pin in that for now. But let's shift the conversation now to looking, because anytime you make a big league trade, you're gonna have to not. I know teams want big league talent, but let's be real here. You're not going to get 1-for-1. You know what I mean? You're not going to you're going to have to look at prospects and things like that. So, and thankfully for the Blue Jays, because I think the nature of our conversation, there aren't too many really tradable big league pieces where the Blue Jays can afford to give up a whole heck of a lot on the big league roster. But the minor league roster is a little bit of a different story. And we saw for the first time the Blue Jays not necessarily hoarding prospects, and they dipped into that to get Jose Barrios. So we know they will do it. They can do it. Just saying, Steve. So the question is, will they do it again and further take away from the prospect capital that they've developed? And I think a big part of whether they will or won't has to do with the compensatory picks they'll pick up for Simeon and Ray signing elsewhere. I think that'll help them in the draft. But realistically, if you had asked me this question last offseason, would I have said Simeon, Woods, Richardson, and Austin Martin were untouchable? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. How many weeks has that been? Go back and look at that episode and see if I even said that. I don't listen to myself, so how would I know? But who's left, right? Because there's got to be some give here. So Steve, I'm going to start with you. When you look at the Blue Jays, bless you. When you look at the Blue Jays prospects, and it's still a good system, but who do you not move away?
Well, if it's me, everyone is available. They're a prospect. They're available. Might you come to regret it later? Perhaps, but if you're getting the performance you need now, you can deal with what you've lost down the road at that time. So really, for me, it's no one. But if I was going to single out names, Gabriel Marino would be one. And the more I think about it,
thanks, Matt.
Oh, Matt. You just, the guy's just, it's amazing. You know, he's complimenting people's appearance and saying, bless you. Talk about most valuable commentator. There you go. But anyway.
He not only watches, but he cares.
Exactly. When I saw Marino in the Arizona Fall League, I kept thinking, Craig Biggio, not Kevin, but Craig Biggio. The guy, a catcher that can run, obviously has great field awareness. But really, Gabriel Marino is Russell Martin. Wow. Guy who's a good defensive catcher, can call a good game, but he's also athletic enough that he can play other positions. I guess third base has been there. I'm sure he could be an adequate first baseman on a fill-in basis. So I would say Gabriel Marino, it would have to really blow me away if I'm going to put Marino in a deal. And there's a guy they drafted in the 4th round this year named Chad Dallas. He was recruited to the University of Tennessee as a closer. Within half a season, he was the number 1 starter for a university that's in one of the major university conferences, in the States. His stuff, his fastball, pretty much right around 93, 94, can top out at 98. He's developed a pretty nasty cutter. So theoretically, now he's added to his repertoire. He could be a rotation piece, but he's the future. He's the future closer. I watch a lot of U.S. college baseball. He was just electric. I was excited watching him on TV as I was watching Manoah at West Virginia University. I mean, he is just terrific. So those would really probably be the 2 main prospects at this point I would not trade. Even if he was a 4th round pick, he was a steal at a 4th round pick. I'm not quite sure. I think because of the question about is he a starter or is he really a reliever, I think his repertoire is going to move him to the bullpen. It matches up better as a bullpen guy. But those would be the 2 guys that I would just say, sorry, next. Come up with another name.
Right. And then it's the funny thing about drafting, eh? Like some teams will, I need a starter and therefore I'm only after a starter. But just take a guy who can pitch. Figure out a role later. I mean, he gets to the big leagues like 4 years after being drafted, 3-4 years anyway. Depending on how old he is and all of that stuff. But that I find that very interesting. That you really only have 2 on your list. And Moreno, I think, might be on everybody's list. But Karen, I'll throw it to you just to see if you have any others.
Yeah, well, you're right. I actually have a list of 2 as well. And Moreno is on my list as well. I just the more I see, I finally got a chance to actually see him play in the Arizona Fall League, a couple of games that were televised. And I'm hearing about him. I'm reading stats, reading scouting reports, and I, like you said, if we've got a young Russell Martin, the Blue Jays were fortunate enough to have Russell Martin, but he was already getting to the twilight of his career. He had the one really good season in 2015. He was sort of good in 2016, like the Blue Jays themselves. And as it was kind of like, as Russell Martin goes, so go the Blue Jays. Because he wasn't good anymore, not really, not compared to what he'd been, and the team was just, unfortunately. But yeah, the opportunity to have someone who might be comparable and have him for like a good 6 years, 5 or 6 years, depending on what the new CBA is, and then maybe he's someone that they extend. Who knows? Anyway, he's one that I really don't want to trade away. The other prospect, who I keep hearing lots and lots and lots about, and from what I understand, the Blue Jays really don't want to part with him either, is Orelvis Martinez. I'm hearing so much about his hit tool and that he is being compared to another like Adrian Beltre, and I could see him, if the Blue Jays do, let's say they trade for an established third baseman with 2 years of team control left, and then he should happen to leave via free agency, you could almost slide Martinez in 2024 to replace him, maybe. So
right.
Those are a much shorter list for the prospects.
Well, I gotta say, mine is actually shorter. And I don't say that lightly, because I understand that you gotta, develop from within, and you can't sustain a winning team unless you're the Yankees, without developing your own. You know what I mean? Like, you can't trade. Nobody's going to do these lopsided trades that they do with the Yankees, and the Blue Jays just aren't going to throw the kind of stupid money around like the Yankees have in the past. So I understand that you need that kind of wave, the waves of talent, as Mark Shapiro used to say. I get it. However, I would trade it all for a championship. And I personally believe, I know Ryan Mueller, our minor league guru here at Jays from the Couch, he always says prospects are just that. They'll break your heart. There's no guarantee. And he only follows prospects, basically. And the first time he said it, I was like, okay, sure, I get it. But the more he kept saying it, the more I kept listening and thinking, you know what? You're right. How rare is it to win a World Series? How often does that chance come around? The Blue Jays right now have a chance to do that multiple times over the next 5-6 years. Think about that. So if that means Aurelvis Martinez in 4 years is playing somewhere else, in Miami or in Oakland, or wherever Oakland moves to, Vancouver Island or wherever they go, so be it. If Gabriel Marino is playing somewhere else in 4 or 5 years, as much as it would hurt, so be it. Because what you're going to get back is an attempt to win a World Series. And the Blue Jays are in that position right now. And I would listen, my children are in the next room. At least one of them, I would deal for a championship.
My cats are not going anywhere, though.
Wow. Okay, I should have said my dog. I should have said my dog, because now I sound like a terrible person. But in all seriousness, it doesn't matter to me. I want a World Series. I want a championship. And I'm being greedy because I get it. But in the next 5 years, they could win easily 2 or 3. That, to me, is worth any prospect in baseball. Steve.
And I agree wholeheartedly with Ryan about this. And when he comes on, we have to make sure every Blue Jay fan on the planet tunes in, because nobody analyzes and understands prospects better than Ryan Mueller. But they call it a farm system for a reason. You raise these crops not to bury them under the ground or keep them hidden. You sell them to benefit yourself, to grow, to add more acreage. That's why it's called a farm system. So I tend to go with you. I picked Marino in Dallas just for the sake of the exercise. But really, at this point, I'm with you too. I don't care. Trade them. Mm-hmm. I don't care how good they could be or have been in the minors. Trade them if you're getting an established production bat or arm to contribute for a title now.
Right. And let's be real. Ross Atkins is not going to trade Martinez or Moreno for some schmo down. You know what I mean? So I can say that in confidence that I don't care about any prospect going anywhere, because I know that the return is going to be something worth it. So and I have that confidence.
Barrios caliber.
Right. That being said, Sarah's watching on Facebook, and Karen, she's on your side. You were on the same wavelength. Sarah, again, another regular viewer, and we deeply appreciate that. Matt Sweeby's back again. The real conversation is how you balance the choice between having a small chance of winning it all in multiple years versus having a larger chance in a smaller window. Excellent point. I agree. If the Blue Jays were going for one season in 2022, and this was their only chance, I might be a little more hesitant, and I might not have the same stance. If it's 1 year, like the 2015-esque Blue Jays, where everybody's getting older and they're This is not that, though. The Blue Jays right now, legitimately over the next 6 years, that's why Jose Barrios was comfortable signing an extension with an opt-out that is 5 years away. Think about that, right? So for me, this isn't a short-term, blind, kind of impulsive thing. For me, this is a legit chance at a championship in multiple seasons. And that's why I don't care. Trade whoever you need to trade and throw in Randall Grichuk on the way. Just trick him into like carrying bags or something. Hey, Randall, can you take this bag onto that bus for me? And the bus pulls away and he's like, ooh. Yeah. Anyway, and the fun part about this is that we all have our what ifs and our hypothesizing and their whatevers, right? And that's why I love the conversation. But it is time. Our weekly segment, Jays from the Couch, proudly presents fake Blue Jays news. Leading off our fake news, the Toronto Blue Jays. Jays from the Couch has learned that the Toronto Blue Jays had planned to have a special anti-vax night. Anti-vaxxers would get in a free ticket in the 500 level at Rogers Center and be the first in line for the Stephen Hazmat's suit promotion. But of course, it was rejected after Matt signed in St. Louis. Wah, wah. Sad face. That would have been a great promotion, a bunch of people up in the 500 level, all in yellow suits, and although they couldn't figure out where to put the cup holders. How do you drink? You put a straw in through they couldn't figure it out. So another reason why it was scrapped. Anyway, regular followers of Jays from the Couch might remember a day where we had a great working relationship with Velvet's rear end. There it is again. Velvet shows up in our fake news segment. See, even the cats love this segment. Anyway, longtime Jays from the Couch supporters might remember a time where we had a wonderful professional working relationship with the Toronto Blue Jays and its president, Mark Shapiro. I have had many conversations with this fine gentleman. We talked many things. It started over, actually, Ezekiel Carrera. I kid you not. That was our first interaction, and he reached out to me. And we had a great relationship for years. However, that has changed. Since Richard Griffin, former Toronto journalism deity Richard Griffin, took over the Blue Jays media relations, it turns out that we haven't been able to maintain the same relationship because all requests must be sent via Canada Post and written on an old-fashioned Underwood typewriter. And as a result, Jays from the Couch, being an online presence, moving into the 21st century, unfortunately, we do not qualify for the media tag, however you want to call it, designation. That's my thing. Anyway, moving on, Randall Grichuk's wife recently posted a video of a gift she gave him for Christmas. She got a little elf on the shelf with his face on it. It was adorable sitting there on the couch. And in the video, Randall can be heard saying, "What the hell?" Now, Jays from the Couch has learned why he was confused. He was confused because it wasn't an elf on the bench, and it probably cost her more than his on-base percentage. Now, in related news, my wife has requested I get a Randall Grichuk mask for Christmas. So if any of you know anywhere that sells them, please let me know. And finally, Lourdes Gurriel and his wife recently had their second child. Congratulations to the family. Everybody's doing well. But Jays from the Couch has learned that while he made it to the hospital on time and the baby was born fully healthy, he refused to use Google Maps and ended up taking the most ridiculous route you've ever seen. In fact, sources say he can be seen circling the same block twice before finally landing in the right spot. Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Sean. With the MLB lockout casting a gloom over this holiday season for baseball fans everywhere, Rogers Communications and the Toronto Blue Jays today announced a joint venture certain to have Blue Jays fans asking Santa and family to add it to their gift list. Never one to ignore opportunities to grow their customer base and their bank accounts, Rogers will launch a new streaming venture on Christmas Eve called Edward Rogers Neighborhood. To make the profiteering even merrier, the ownership group enlisted the help of current and former Blue Jays personnel to create original holiday programming Blue Jay fans just cannot miss. It's going to be a Blue Jays Christmas starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Time when the channel premieres How the Gritch Stole Christmas, based on the cherished Dr. Seuss story. Featuring the voice talents of Randall Gritchick as the Gritch, yours truly as his loyal dog Feck, and narrated by curmudgeon announcer Buck Martinez, it is a unique take on the classic story. The Gritch actually loves Christmas and wants to share his skills and gifts with all the Jays down in Jaysville. But the Jays down in Jaysville want nothing to do with Gritch and set a trap for him as he triumphantly enters the town square on his sled full of goodies. The Gritch is then sold to another MLB city while his dog Feck is cooked and served as the roast beast at the town's Christmas time dinner. The next holiday offering is the drama It's a Wagaspack Life, starring ex-Jays pitcher Jacob Wagaspack. After a season of disappointing performances for the hometown Toronto Jaybirds, Wagaspack contemplates jumping off the Rainbow Bridge in Niagara Falls and mutters, "Everyone would be better off if I never became a major league pitcher." Through a series of game clips featuring Wagaspack's misadventures, Wags' guardian angel, portrayed by Blue Jays pitching coach Pete Walker, convinces him he is 100% correct. But rather than allow Jacob to jump, the film ends with the scene of the Jays cast-off throwing a baseball against a barn on his farm and still not being able to hit the side of it with any pitch. But the Christmas Eve instant classic will no doubt be a loving rendition of the holiday standard Ross Atkins' A Christmas Carol, starring Hyunjin Ryu as Ebenezer Ryuj. Unwilling and seemingly unable to pitch more than 5 innings during any game, Ryuj's efforts cause his teammate Tiny Tim Meza to permanently damage his pitching arm, having to overwork himself as the only other left-handed pitcher on the team's roster. On the eve of the 7th game of the World Series, which was forced to be played on Christmas Day due to the extended lockout, Ryuj is visited by 3 spirits in the hopes of reminding him of the importance of once again qualifying for a quality start. Former Blue Jays starter Dave Stieb, as the ghost of pitching past, takes Ryuj back to his childhood days in South Korea when he never wanted to stop playing baseball. Current Jays and former Dodgers teammate Ross Stripling gives Ryuj a glimpse of pitching present, where Tiny Tim Meza is in agonizing pain, unable to feed or dress himself, but still telling his pitching coach that he was ready to pitch again when Ebenezer took himself out of the big game. Manager Charlie Montoyo steals your heart as the ghost of pitching future, showing Ryuj his fate sitting alone in the bullpen all season long since he could not bring joy to his team by pitching the way they needed him to. When Ryuj awakens, he rushes to the Rogers Center and pitches a complete game shutout to give his team the pennant. "God pay us all, everyone," exclaims Tiny Tim Meza as he and Ebenezer Ryuj sing a Christmas carol and toast the most holy of days. To encourage Blue Jay fans to watch the new streaming service, Rogers Communication is offering a baseball-themed discount of a free 9 minutes before their credit cards will be charged. A special logo for the Christmas Eve program will appear in the upper right corner of the screen. A naivete scene showing all the Blue Jays players currently on the roster gathered around the Commissioner's Trophy, celebrating the belief that the roster as it currently exists can make the World Series in 2022. Back to you, Sean.
Oh, I'm still laughing at listening to Buck Martinez trying to say Cindy Lou Who. All right. Before we head out here, let's bring back for a moment of seriousness, Karen, with the final question for this week.
Right. So in talking about the possibility of trades, and it's been happening all season, all the off season, and probably before that, a couple of names keep coming up. The Jays, as much as I love Santiago Espinal, they could certainly do with a more established, consistent player at third base. So there's Matt Chapman, phenomenal defender. Offense last year was rather average. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. So he could be a bounce back candidate. The one that everyone I'm sure would love to have, but the cost could be prohibitive, is Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez is very good on both sides of the ball. He's an above average defender and a very, very, very good hitter. So you're the Blue Jays front office and you have the chance to trade for one of these two guys. You can get Matt Chapman without giving up Moreno or Martinez. Or you can pivot and get Jose Ramirez, but you have to give up at least or Elvis Martinez. I put the question to each of you: which way do you go?
Well, I'll go first, and I say Matt Chapman, and that's actually rather easy for me. I've kind of, while Jose Ramirez would be great, I would be happy with a Matt Chapman addition. And the fact that you don't have to give up one of those two, that just makes it better. So that's kind of where I am. Would I be happy with a Jose Ramirez and losing one or two of those two? It would hurt, but I would get over it rather quickly, I think. But if I had to choose, it would be a Matt Chapman. Steve?
Same here. I'd go Matt Chapman. I mean, there are third basemen, and then there are elite defensive third basemen, and Matt Chapman is right there. I think the thing that would put it over the edge for me is the fact that Chapman made an adjustment after the All-Star break to his swing and to his approach at the plate. And he became more productive after he had done that. I think to a large extent, he was still favoring that hip that was surgically repaired. And maybe he was afraid, but they made that adjustment. You know, he took to the idea. And I think that Matt Chapman will win as many games with his glove as he will with his bat. And while Ramirez is just otherworldly as a hitter, I think Matt Chapman's the whole package.
Yeah, and I selfishly, of course, have a piece coming up tomorrow about Matt Chapman. So, you know, there's that as well. Head to JFtC.com for that gem.
Well, you're welcome for the segue.
Yeah, exactly. You teed that right up for me. But Chapman comes with some red flags, but I still, even though those red flags exist, I still think the Toronto Blue Jays should just ignore them and pull the trigger on that one. But yeah, that brings us to the end of episode 282. I can't believe it. When I first started this, 282 episodes would have been just something I couldn't wrap my head around, and I almost still can't. But here we are, 282 in the books. Thank you both for coming on every week. Tonight is no different, no exception. Blah, blah, blah. Thank you. I lost my words there for a second. Steve, let's start with you. How can everybody follow you and what's coming up on the On-Fec Circle?
Well, the On-Fec Circle tomorrow night is, again, a kinder, gentler feck. Again, holiday theme. The basic theme is toying with the Blue Jays. So you can give an idea of what might be in things for that. And rather than plug my social media type of thing, I want to refer everybody to jaysfromthecouch.com. At the bottom of the site, you will see an opportunity to either purchase terrific Jays from the Couch swag. Profits all go to benefit ALS Canada, or even better, if you've got that person you just don't know who to buy for, a parent or uncle or whatever, it's a place to also make a donation. Make a donation in that person's name to ALS Canada. It's truly indescribable to say whatever amount you donate, all the good that it can do, not just for research, but for everyday things. So please do consider that as we headed closer to Christmas Eve.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Steve. Appreciate that. Karen, let everybody know how they can follow you after. It's crazy. Steve gets all mushy during the holidays. His heart has grown 3 sizes just right before our eyes. But yours, Karen, is always larger than that. Let everybody know how they can follow you and all that.
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Karen Soutar1, just like it says there, SOUTAR1, and I'm on Twitter a lot, kind of addicted. So yeah, you can always talk to me about anything respectful, baseball or other reasonable topics, and yeah.
That's right. We may start another fundraising campaign. Karen's addiction to Twitter is a little concerning. I joke, of course. But thank you both for joining me for another week. I couldn't do this without you, and your help and your appearance here. It means a lot to me. So thank you both. Thank you to Matt Sweeby watching at home on YouTube and Sarah watching on Facebook. We really appreciate that. Keep the comments coming. Every time we'll fire them up on the screen, and you too can be part. It's just like you're sitting on the couch with us here. So thank you to all of you as well. Head to jaysfromthecouch.com for all of our Blue Jays coverage. We're the audio version of our podcast available on Apple and everywhere else you find podcasts. Just look us up, give us a subscribe, and then it's automatically downloaded onto your device. You don't even have to worry about it. So for Karen, for Steve, this is Sean Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. Hoping life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle and you don't miss it like Randall Gritchick.